Something that is just a weird fear of mine is doctors pretending to be doctors. Like not actually having their licensure, but just playing the role and secretly killing people while doing so. And yes, this has happened before. The most haunted hotel in America is known as the Crescent Hotel. I don't know if anybody else can relate to this, but I loved staying up at night watching ghost hunters. I would run around with my little EMF detector seeing if I could find ghosts myself. Well, my favorite episode of Ghost Hunters actually covered the Crescent. They ended up actually making contact with one of the ghosts, but I never really deep dived into how creepy this hotel's history actually is. So the Crescent Hotel was built in 1986. And it was a resort for the wealthy, rich, and powerful. But pretty fast, they found this whole hotel to be very unmanageable. And it was weirdly very accident prone in the building process. There was a stonemason named Michael who passed away, but we'll get to that later. Well, it reopened in 1908 as a college for girls. This photo gives me very much Midsummer vibes. While this college was considered prestige, they covered up a death. Part 2 to the Crescent Hotel. Well, one of the girls in this conservatory ended up falling for a guy. She ended up getting pregnant, and it was a huge deal during this time to be unwed and pregnant. On top of this, her dad forbade her from being with him. So she threw herself off the top of the building. The college completely covered it up, went about their business, and kept up with their high-priced tuition. But they only lasted until 1924. While all the way in Iowa, a man named Norman Baker was a radio host. Very eccentric, had a big personality. And while there isn't a whole lot of information on how he came to this conclusion, he decided that he was going to be a doctor without any kind of license or experience. He claimed that he had discovered a variety of cures to numerous diseases, but it didn't take long for Iowa to figure out that he did not have the medical training, so they ran him out. Well, Mr. Baker was not giving up. And on his ventures where he could find a new place where he could cure people, he came across the Crescent. And in 1937, he opened the Baker's Cancer Curing Hospital. Hundreds of people checked into this hospital and hundreds did not check out. Part 3 to the Crescent Hotel. It honestly breaks my heart because so many sick and desperate people showed up to his hospital because he literally claimed that he had the cure. But what his cure was injections from a mixture of glycerin, alcohol, and tea from watermelon seeds and clover leaves. And these injections were apparently extremely painful and happening 5 to 7 times a day. Patients would be in severe pain. And when they started to get extremely sick, they would be separated off from everyone else in an annex that was once used as the servants' quarters from the hotel before. And to give some perspective on the creepiness of the hotel today, that place is now a suite that you can spend the night in. And Mr. Baker was considered to have killed about 300 people because there's 300 names that were never checked out. And he actually killed them indirectly because he made his nurses do all the injections. He actually couldn't stand the sight of any medical procedure. He somehow got recognized by the American Medical Association and ended up making millions in today's money. And after people would pass away, he would take them down to the morgue, which is now the basement of the hotel. Part 4 of the Crescent Hotel. So you can still go down to this basement and look at all the gurneys, the wheelchairs, the medical equipment, along with a ton of jars. Some of these are filled with his concoction, some are filled with human remains. And as they've continued to build along the area, they have found more of Norman's things. Just as recent as 2019, they were excavating the area and ended up finding 500 items that included more jars filled with human remains like tumors and also more of his little cure. As you can imagine, with all of the death that happened here, this place is extremely haunted. Listed as being one of the top hotels you don't want to stay at. There's so many accounts of people staying here and talking about their experience along with photos online, and people sharing just how frightening it is. Well, besties, I think we should go stay there. It's only 3 hours away from me, so I'm going to get in the car and I'm going to go drive. And I will be vlogging my experience for YouTube, which is linked in my bio. But in the meantime, if you want to hear about the specific ghosts that haunt this hotel, go to my Instagram, go to the middle reels tab. It's really interesting and you get to learn how people outside of the hospital passed away. On June 11th of 2014, 4 women and 1 man were indicted for illegally drugging men and charging thousands of dollars onto their credit cards in New York City strip clubs. Now, I know you guys have seen the movie Hustlers. I am a huge fan of J-Lo and I really wanted to look in the true story that went behind this movie. One of the really interesting things that I found out is that Samantha Barbash, who was played by J-Lo, actually wasn't a stripper at all. But Samantha Barbash, along with her friend Rosie Keough, ended up hustling over $200,000 from men and targeted doctors, lawyers, bankers, while leading a small ring of exotic dancers and strip club workers in a 4-month scheme. To provide a little bit of backstory, Rosie ended up dropping out of school at 17 to work at a diner. And this is really where she learned originally how to finesse for tips. But she was right next door to a strip club, and managers from the strip club would come in and eat at the diner. Some would even suggest that she should come work for them, offering her a job. And realizing that she could be making a lot more, she ditched that waitressing job, not knowing what was going to happen next. This is part 2 to the Hustlers case. So Rosie ended up starting her job at a strip club and was making about $2,000 to $3,000 each night. Thankfully, for one of the first times in media, strippers were being actually shown in high positive regard, so it was inviting a lot more people into the strip clubs. And many of the Wall Street bros, after a hard day's work of scamming people, would come in and spend a lot of money. And at one point, Rosie was making about 10 grand a night from hedge fund managers. Literally because she was making her tuition in one night, she was like, school can be on the back burner. However, because of the type of men that were coming in, they had an overall mistrust for guys. In addition to this, men also ran the clubs. And a lot of the times they were getting really ridiculous working hours. And on top of this, which I did not know, you had to pay just to be able to work at certain clubs. So she was being charged about $300 just to come in and work. Everything was pretty much taxed, so you pretty much had to pay these managers additional money if you wanted them to send good clients your way. As Rosie states in her interview, all the girls collectively snapped. And then this is when the financial crisis of 2008 hit. Part 3 to the Hustlers case. So in 2008, the financial crisis hit and people were losing businesses, their homes. Wall Street completely crashed and trillions of dollars of wealth were gone overnight. So all this money going into the strip clubs were now disappearing. The girls were desperate and looking for another way to bring in the big bucks. Rosie had met Samantha back in 2007. She was a single mom from the Bronx and she was a recruiter for the club. So she would go out, find men, and bring them back. And you would get a percentage of each dollar that this guy would spend at the club if you were the one that recruited him. While this process is legal, Samantha decided to have some other girls do this along with her, and it progressively got illegal. Rosie would go to very high-end bars, dressed in a blazer, befriend the men, acting like she's just one of them and got off of her job as well. She would keep an eye out for things like Rolexes or Black American Express cards, and sometimes the other girls would join as well. But they ended up drugging them with MDMA and ketamine, which is not at all like a typical roofie. It's way more dangerous. And they would charge up their cards to insanely high amounts. Part 4 to the Hustlers case. So this group of girls were really getting away with it because a lot of these guys had really high-profile jobs or wives at home, so they would wake up the next day with this massive bill. They didn't want people to find out because it was at a strip club, so they would just pay it and move on. And sometimes whenever these guys were out there and the banks would flag it, the girls would actually pick up the phone pretending to be their assistant and confirm that the charges were legit. Samantha ended up setting her eyes on another victim, Dr. Yunin, who was a young cardiac surgeon from New Jersey. He was single, never married, and they really thought that he was the perfect target. They set him up on a date with another girl named Karina, who was obviously a part of this scheme, and they went on 3 dates total. The first 2 dates, he would wake up in the morning feeling kind of fuzzy, not really remembering, but he thought that he just overdrank. But by the 3rd date, he actually woke up with a call from American Express, stating that there was $100 grand in charges to his credit card at Robert's Steakhouse, which was a steakhouse at Scores, the strip club. Absolutely pissed, he called Karina and went off, and then he decided to take legal action. Part 5 to the Hustlers case. So after American Express ends up looking at the receipts and seeing that they're forged, Amex refuses to pay Scores. So Scores then sues Dr. Yunin and then he countersues. He states that he's never even been to this strip club, and that's when Scores ends up releasing CCTV footage of him being there, but obviously he was drugged, so he doesn't remember. But the tabloids exploded. They were painting the picture that he just kind of spent too much money being drunk one night. So he went straight to the police, who had actually been aware of the scam for some time, but they needed a solid tip in order to put up a sting. So they end up sending in an agent to pose as a rich guy. And if you go to my Instagram Reels tab, there's a video over there that goes into detail on this sting operation. But ultimately, they were able to get enough evidence off of this to where they could take it to court and actually have the girls arrested. And it wasn't long till the girls started to make plea deals. Rosie was the first one to cooperate and she settled for 5 years of probation. Karina ended up serving 16 weeks at Rikers Island, along with 5 years probation. I want to know what y'all's thoughts are on this case. And go to my Insta if you want to see the extra video. Put a finger down if the guy that cheated on you ended up getting the other girl pregnant. God, I hope this is not something that we can relate on. Well, to provide a little bit of backstory, I met this guy that we'll call Logan at a bar. And while that should have maybe been a red flag, homegirl really thought she met her Prince Charming. He swept me off my feet, we exchanged numbers, and eventually decided to give us a chance. And let me tell you, the first year was a fairy tale. 4 months we talked about having a baby, and eventually I ended up getting a positive pregnancy test back. So I was scared but excited to give this to him. And when I handed it to him, honey, he just went silent. I asked him how he felt, and his response was, like I need to pee. Later on, I begged this man to propose to me because we were having a baby together, and he proposed to me with the cheapest turn your finger green ring. And I know these are fat red flags, but at the time, I just saw them as pink because I was giving birth to our son. Well, the second it was time to give birth to him, my fiance wasn't involved at all, to the point where the nurses were asking if the dad was in the picture. I was straight up alone. But now pay attention. One female friend that went on double dates with us often, named Tori, came up with my husband to check on me. Part 2 to my ex cheating on me and getting the other girl pregnant. So a little backstory on this girl, Tori. I knew her because we had gone on double dates with her and her husband before. I had been to her house multiple times. She was also pregnant, and I was super, super excited for her. Logan always encouraged a relationship between us. Because we could both relate on being pregnant, we talked almost every single day until the end of my pregnancy. Logan and Tori talked every day, multiple times a day. But again, I just saw this as a pink flag. He would go visit her during lunch breaks all the time, but because she was married, I really didn't think it was a big deal. And I trusted Logan, right? So anyways, he ended up bringing her to the room, where she held my brand new baby in her arms and met my parents. I was also touching her baby bump and was super excited for her. Well, when it was time for her to leave, Logan walked her out. And they were gone for about an hour. But still, I didn't think anything of it. However, a few months later, I ended up getting a Facebook friend request from Tori's husband. However, I don't really check my Facebook very often, so it took me weeks to realize that he had requested me and sent me a message. And it said, "Let me know if you want to know how badly your fiance is cheating on you with my wife. 3 to my boyfriend cheating on me and getting the other girl pregnant." So after Tori's husband sent me this message, I still couldn't believe it. I thought it was just a joke until I looked at Logan and said, "Hey, Tori's husband texted me." As soon as I said that, his face dropped and he stopped talking, which solidified my fear, and my husband admitted to everything. I dropped my phone and just cried. Like, how many times had he left to go help her while I stayed at home pregnant? The amount of times he went to go visit her at lunch? And he even admitted that the baby that Tori was pregnant with was his. I ended up finding out that their relationship had been going on for 3 years, which was before she was even married to her husband and before Logan and I got together. And when we broke up, he ended up proposing to Tori with a much nicer ring. But ultimately, when she had the baby, he just abandoned that baby too. And to this day, he has not seen that baby and still refuses to see my son. I even tried to suggest a healthy co-parenting relationship between the 4 of us, and he couldn't even seem to do that. Tori and her husband ended up getting back together, and she's tried to reach out multiple times to apologize, but it just really doesn't make up for what she did.
Look, it's him. He winked. He's the chosen one.
My son! I'm so proud. This is the best day of my life.
My parents picked up my twin brother, Damien, and embraced him like he was some kind of treasure. They left me alone with the nurse. Of course, I don't remember the day of my birth, but later on in my life, my aunt told me that's how it happened. From the very first day, my parents decided that Damien was special, and that I, Peter, was, well, rubbish. You might be wondering why. But wait, before I go on, I have a huge announcement to make. Storytime Animated is doing a massive giveaway for our awesome viewers. This week, we'll be giving away, drumroll please, an Apple laptop. If you want a chance at winning, you must be subscribed to the channel, like this video, and share this video with 3 friends. Then lastly, leave a comment below. How long have you been watching us? That's all. Check the description for more information. And now, back to the story. Well, my parents belonged to some weird kind of cult. When the leader found out that my mom was pregnant with twins, he told her that he got a vision from the heavens that one of us would change the world. That one of us was extremely special.
But how will I know which one it is?
The first baby to open his eyes is the one. He is a prophet, and he will be our next leader.
An ordinary parent would probably be like, what the heck? But my mom and dad were totally brainwashed and believed everything they were told. This made my life a living hell. And if you want to find out how, you need to keep watching. So you can probably guess my childhood wasn't the best. I think my earliest memory is when I was 3 years old. My parents took Damien and I to the place where they worshipped, and as soon as we walked in, everyone stood up and the leader came to pick Damien up. Everyone stretched their hand out and they looked like they thought that Damien was some sort of angel on earth. He was put to sit on a nicely decorated chair in the front of the room, and my parents left me with some old people in the back. They paid absolutely no attention to me, and the leader kept telling everyone how special Damien was. Growing up, he always got the best of everything. My parents thought that he was too precious to go to school, so they had him homeschooled and hired all the best tutors in the country. I, on the other hand, went to the worst public school in the district. To make things worse, he got every single thing he asked for. Christmas and birthdays were the worst days ever. I remember one Christmas, all I asked for was a toy helicopter. On Christmas morning, I woke up and ran to the tree feeling so excited. There were tons of presents with Damien's name on them, but none for me. Nothing. Not a thing. I ran to my room crying, and no one even bothered to come to check on me. My parents just enjoyed watching Damien open his gifts. Birthdays were exactly the same. Sometimes I feel like they just forgot I existed, and that they had only had one child. When I was about 8 years old, I think my parents got tired of having me around.
Peter, I need you to pack up your things because we're sending you to live with your Aunt Gabertha.
Who is she? I never even met her before.
She's my sister. She's always wanted a kid, but she can't have any. And I figured we had an extra we're not using anyway. So you're going to stay with her from now on.
To be honest, I wasn't even devastated because it wasn't like I had a relationship with my parents anyway. I was just a bit sad to be leaving my brother because we actually did like each other. We can video call, right? Yeah, we'll see each other again someday. I'm sorry Mom and Dad treat you like this. I don't know why. I just wanted to let you know I think it's unfair. And I don't really enjoy what they're doing to me. But let's just hope time flies and I can turn 18 and get out of here. By the next week, I was gone. My parents drove me to the airport, said goodbye, and that was that. When I reached the other side, my aunt was waiting with a huge sign that said, "Welcome, Peter." It's the first time in my life I ever felt welcomed anywhere. She grabbed me and gave me a big hug, then her driver took us home. So apparently Aunt Gilbertha was loaded, which explains the driver. She lived in a huge house all on her own, and I guess she was lonely for real. She showed me to my room, which was 100 times more amazing than what I had with my parents. And that night at dinner, we had a long talk.
The truth is, I'm not lonely at all. But I'm aware that your parents are total lunatics. They never spoke about you and they focused only on Damien because of what their weird religious leader told them. Totally bonkers if you ask me.
Well, thanks for rescuing me then, Aunt Gilbertha.
Oh, please, call me Gilly. I hate that name.
Okay, Gilly.
I hope you have a great time here.
And I did. My life totally changed. The years passed and I was a happy, comfortable teenager who went to an awesome high school. I had some pretty cool friends and a girlfriend named Christine. She was so cute and always made me feel like the happiest guy in the world. I got to explore some hobbies and talents I never knew I had too. I'd go golfing every weekend because apparently I had a knack for that. I'd FaceTime Damien sometimes, and one day he told me that they had moved to New Zealand because the cult was expanding and the leader asked them to join him there. Later, they posted so many amazing pictures, and I felt a bit jealous when I browsed through my mom's Facebook pictures. She had captions like,
"A day near the sea with the best sun in the world,"
or,
"Me and my most prized possession."
it was like I didn't exist to them at all. To take my mind off it all, I'd focus on my golfing and of course Christine. One of our favorite things to do together was to go hiking in the mountains. I remember this one day like it was yesterday. We had the most amazing day together, and we kissed on top of one of the highest peaks in our state. Then we went back down and went to my house to hang out. As soon as I opened the door, my aunt ran towards us, screaming,
"Your brother has been kidnapped!"
"What? Where?"
"In New Zealand. The police can't find him, and there's no trace of him anywhere. No one knows where he's gone. Christine, I'm so sorry, but I need to speak to Peter alone. He'll call you as soon as we're done."
Christine left, and I went to the living room with my aunt.
"Listen to me carefully, Peter. This isn't good.
I know. I hope Damien is okay.
I'm not just talking about Damien. Your parents have been feeding off the attention he gets from that cult of weirdos. If they don't find him, they're going to come for you.
Me? Why?
They'll pretend you're Damien, of course. You're identical twins.
So what do we do?
We've got to leave."
Leave? No, what about my girlfriend, my school? My life is so awesome here.
"I know, honey, but we have no choice. I've already bought us a house in Alaska and I've sold this one. You can still talk to Christine online, but you can't let her know where we are."
I sulked all the way up to my room. I was sad. Why did my life have to be like this? And where was Damien? I tried FaceTiming him, but there was no reply. I guessed my aunt was right. I started packing, and after that, I ran to Christine's house to hug her goodbye.
Am I the asshole for insulting my boyfriend's weight in front of his friends? Relevant to the story, my boyfriend is 6 feet tall and about 229 pounds. I am 5'6" and about 120 pounds. From a medical standpoint, my boyfriend is obese and I am fairly normal weight. I really don't mind his weight. He was obese when I met him and that wasn't a problem for me. He has struggled with his weight for many years and constantly talks about wanting to lose weight but never actually diets or exercises. Again, not a huge deal for me, but I try to be supportive and offer him advice or general encouragement whenever he discusses his desire to lose weight. An occasional point of contention between us is that he has a tendency to offer me diet advice. For example, whenever I make a smoothie, he says, "You shouldn't drink those things, they're full of hidden calories." Or when I do strength training, he says, "You'll just gain weight because you'll put on too much muscle." It's annoying because nutrition and fitness are actually big passions of mine. I'm not an expert by any means, but I've done several courses and I feel I know more than the average person. Plus, I feel that I can demonstrably show that I can manage my own weight. So I don't like that he constantly feels the need to give me advice. This past weekend, he and I met up with a few of his friends at a beer garden. At some point, the guys were talking about their experiences with online dating. My boyfriend said that he'd used Tinder prior to meeting me, but then he deleted it because there were too many desperate fat chicks. He said this in such a disgusted, dismissive way that I genuinely saw red for a second and just blurted out, "Seriously, you're going to criticize fat chicks?" There was a really long, awkward pause, and then one of his friends made a joke and the conversation sort of moved on. But my boyfriend didn't speak to me for the rest of the evening. He texted me the next day and to say that it was incredibly rude and disrespectful to comment on his weight, especially in front of his friends. He says he thinks he wants a few days away from me to decide whether or not he can forgive me. I agree it was rude of me to call him out in front of his friends, but I also think what he said was obnoxious and borderline sexist. I've apologized to him, but I'm not sure if I'm genuinely the asshole here, so am I the asshole? My boyfriend has a longtime female friend who's clearly into him and I don't know what to do. This is gonna sound like the typical insecure girlfriend, but I promise it's not like that. My boyfriend and I have been together for over 6 months and he's really great. He has a friend that he's had for years who is a girl. Normally, I'm not the type to be all like, "You're not allowed to hang out with a single girl alone," but I'm considering telling my boyfriend that he's not allowed to hang out with this girl alone. This girl is obviously so into him and she definitely wants me to know she's coming for him. She keeps saying stuff like, "You don't know him like I do yet," or "We used to go to that place together all the time long before you guys started dating." She also had cute pet names for him and I didn't like it, and as soon as I heard it, I told my boyfriend I didn't like it and he made her stop. Oh my gosh, Josh, remember when we went on a hike, just the two of us? That was the best day. I asked her straight up if she was into him and her response pissed me off. She was like, "I know it's intimidating how close he and I are, but don't worry, you're the girlfriend, I'm just a friend, right?" With a smug smile on her face. I got so mad, but I couldn't talk to my boyfriend about it. I want to tell him to cut her out of his life so bad, but I don't know if I can do that. My boyfriend's dad passed away 2 years ago with a heart condition. He told me that his dad was his best friend growing up, so it hit him really hard. That's why he says she's like a sister to him. That's why I don't know what to do. I already asked him to set boundaries like she can't text late at night or come over to his place unannounced all the time and not interrupting our alone time. He was the only family my boyfriend had. Apparently, this girl really helped him get through it. She apparently was there for him throughout the whole thing. My boyfriend doesn't realize that she's into him